My name is Emma, and I am 28 years old. I still remember that day like it was yesterday, the day my body went numb from the waist down, the day my brother Michael stood over me, laughing at his cruel prank while I lay motionless on the concrete. The day my father yelled, "Walk it off! Stop being a baby!" and my mother accused me of ruining Michael's birthday party. They had no idea that their dismissal of my pain would soon make them criminals. If you have ever had your suffering ignored by the people who should care the most, let me know where you are watching from, hit that like and subscribe button, and stay for a story about the day my family's betrayal changed my life forever. Growing up in the Anderson household was like walking on eggshells. Our family appeared perfect from the outside. A beautiful suburban home in Connecticut, a father who was a successful accountant, a mother who was the ideal homemaker, and 2 children who excelled in school. But appearances can be deceiving. My father, Richard Anderson, was a 6'2" tower of stoicism, a man who believed showing emotion was a sign of weakness. He had been raised by a military father who taught him that pain was just weakness leaving the body. Unfortunately, he passed these toxic beliefs down to his children, especially his firstborn son, Michael. "Emma, you need to toughen up," was my father's mantra throughout my childhood. Whether I was dealing with a scraped knee, a broken heart, or legitimate illness, his response was always the same: minimize, dismiss, move on. My mother, Patricia, was not much better. While she occasionally showed glimpses of nurturing, her primary allegiance was always to my father and Michael. She was a nervous woman who seemed perpetually afraid of upsetting the delicate balance of our household. If acknowledging my pain meant disrupting that balance, she would choose denial every time. "Your brother would never complain about something like that," she would say, drawing unfavorable comparisons that cut deeper than any physical wound. Then there was Michael, my older brother by 3 years now, 31. He had spent his entire life as the golden child, the son who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. Athletic, charismatic, and manipulative, Michael learned early that he could get away with anything as long as he maintained his facade of perfection in front of our parents. I still remember when I was 7 and Michael was 10. He had pushed me off my bike, causing me to break my wrist. When I cried to our parents, Michael claimed I had fallen on my own because I was clumsy. They believed him without question. At the hospital, my father lectured me about being more careful, while my mother fretted about the medical bills. Not once did they consider that Michael might be lying. This pattern continued throughout our childhood and into our adult years. Michael would torment me with pranks that crossed the line into cruelty, and our parents would either ignore his behavior or blame me for provoking him. When I was 12, Michael locked me in our basement for hours during a thunderstorm, knowing I was terrified of the dark. When I finally escaped and confronted our parents, they accused me of making up stories for attention. At 16, Michael sabotaged my science project the night before it was due, causing me to fail the assignment. When I told my parents, they suggested I should have been more prepared and not left everything to the last minute. By the time I reached adulthood, I had learned to keep my distance from my family. I moved out at 18 to attend college in another state, coming home only for major holidays and family events. I built a life for myself as an elementary school teacher, found friends who actually cared about my well-being, and started therapy to address the damage my upbringing had caused. But family ties are hard to sever completely. No matter how much I tried to create boundaries, guilt and obligation would always pull me back into their orbit. Which is why, when my mother called to insist I attend Michael's 31st birthday celebration, I reluctantly agreed. It had been 6 months since I had seen any of them, and part of me hoped that time and distance might have improved our relationship. "It would mean so much to your brother if you came," my mother said, though I doubted Michael cared about my presence at all. "We are having a backyard barbecue, and your father is setting up the new pool deck. Everyone will be there." By everyone, she meant Michael's friends, most of whom were as obnoxious and entitled as he was. The thought of spending an afternoon with them made my stomach churn, but I had run out of excuses. "Fine, I will be there," I agreed, already regretting my decision. "Wonderful, and please dress nicely. You know how important appearances are to your father." That comment stung as it was meant to. My mother knew I had recently embraced a more casual style trading in the preppy outfits my parents approved of for clothes that actually made me comfortable. It was a small act of rebellion, but in the Anderson household, even the smallest deviation from their expectations was treated as a major transgression. As I hung up the phone, I tried to prepare myself mentally for what was to come. I would go to the party, make small talk for a few hours, give Michael a generic birthday card with some cash inside, and leave as soon as socially acceptable. I could handle one afternoon of discomfort if it meant several more months of peace away from them. What I could not have known was that this birthday party would be the last time I would ever walk without assistance. That the casual cruelty that had characterized my relationship with Michael for years would finally escalate to a point of no return. That my parents' refusal to take my pain seriously would cross the line from emotional neglect to criminal negligence. I packed an overnight bag, planning to stay at a hotel rather than in my childhood bedroom. Even that small boundary was important to me, a reminder that I was no longer under their control. I chose an outfit that would pass my father's inspection while still allowing me to feel like myself. Dark jeans, a blue blouse, and comfortable flats. Appropriate for a casual party, but not so formal that I felt like I was playing dress-up. As I drove the 2 hours to my parents' house, I practiced the techniques my therapist had taught me for dealing with difficult family situations. Deep breathing visualization, reminding myself that I was an adult now with the power to leave if things became too uncomfortable. But all the therapy in the world could not have prepared me for what awaited me at that birthday party. No amount of deep breathing could prevent the catastrophe that was about to unfold or heal the physical and emotional scars that would follow. I arrived at my parents' house at precisely 200 years in the afternoon, timing my entrance to coincide with the official start of the party. This was a deliberate strategy to minimize one-on-one interaction with my family. In a crowd, it would be easier to blend in to avoid becoming the sole target of their attention. The driveway was already filled with cars, most of them expensive SUVs and sports cars belonging to Michael's friends. I recognized a few vehicles, including the red Corvette that belonged to his best friend Brandon, who had been equally complicit in tormenting me during our childhood. My mother greeted me at the door with an air kiss and a once-over that told me my outfit had passed inspection, if just barely. "Emma, you made it. Everyone is out back. Your brother just opened his presents." Of course, they had started the gift-giving without waiting for all the guests to arrive. It was a subtle reminder that my presence was not essential, merely tolerated. The living room was filled with expensive wrapped packages, the remnants of what appeared to be an extravagant gift opening session. I spotted a new set of golf clubs, designer clothing, and what looked like keys to some kind of vehicle. "We got him that jet ski he has been wanting," my mother informed me proudly, gesturing to a photograph of the watercraft that sat atop one of the larger boxes. "Your father is having it delivered next week." I nodded, feeling the familiar pang of inequity. For my 30th birthday, 6 months earlier, they had sent a gift card to a department store. The disparity was nothing new, but it still hurt. I placed my own gift, a simple card, with $200 inside on the table with the others, and followed my mother through the house to the backyard. The scene that greeted me was exactly what I had expected. About 30 people, mostly men in their early 30s, drinking beer and lounging around the newly constructed pool deck. My father was playing host at the grill, flipping burgers and steaks with the precision of someone who had spent a lifetime mastering the art of suburban masculinity. Michael was holding court near the pool, surrounded by his usual entourage. He had a beer in one hand and was gesturing animatedly with the other, likely regaling his friends with some exaggerated tale of his own importance. He had gained weight since I had last seen him, his once athletic frame now showing the effects of too many nights of heavy drinking and not enough exercise. When he spotted me, he broke away from his group and approached with the artificial enthusiasm of someone who feels obligated to acknowledge a distant acquaintance. "Little sis, you decided to grace us with your presence after all." His words were friendly enough, but the gleam in his eyes was anything but warm. He pulled me into a hug that was too tight, too aggressive, a physical reminder of the power dynamic that had defined our relationship for decades. "Happy birthday, Michael." I replied, extracting myself from his embrace as quickly as possible. The place looks great. Dad spent a fortune on that new deck, he said, gesturing to the wooden structure that surrounded the in-ground pool. Custom-built Brazilian hardwood. Cost him nearly $20,000. Again, the unspoken comparison hung in the air. Our parents would spare no expense for Michael's comfort and status, while my requests and needs had always been treated as burdensome impositions. I excused myself to get a drink, opting for water rather than alcohol. I knew from experience that I needed to keep my wits about me in these situations. Alcohol would only dull my defenses and make me more vulnerable to their manipulation. For the next hour, I managed to avoid direct interaction with my family by engaging in polite conversation with some of the other guests. There were a few spouses and girlfriends present who seemed equally uncomfortable with the increasingly rowdy atmosphere, and we formed a quiet alliance of the outsiders. But as the afternoon wore on and the alcohol flowed freely, I could sense the energy shifting. Michael and his friends became louder, their behavior more obnoxious. They started reminiscing about their high school days, swapping stories that invariably involved humiliating someone they deemed beneath them. Eventually, inevitably, Michael turned his attention to me. "Hey, remember that time we convinced Emma that the neighbor's dog had rabies?" He called out loud enough for everyone to hear. She was so scared she refused to go outside for a week. His friends laughed, and I felt my cheeks burn with the familiar mixture of embarrassment and anger. I had been 8 years old when Michael and his friends had told me that the friendly Labrador next door had a deadly disease and was going to attack me. The fear had been real, as had the nightmares that followed. Or the time we switched her shampoo with hair removal cream, Brandon added, slapping his knee, as if this act of cruelty was the height of comedy. That particular prank had happened when I was 14. I had been forced to wear hats to school for weeks while my hair grew back in patches. My parents had told me to stop being so dramatic about it. I took a deep breath and started to gather my things. I had reached my limit, and no obligation to family was worth subjecting myself to this kind of humiliation. But as I turned to leave, Michael intercepted me. "Leaving so soon? The party is just getting started." His words were slurred, his eyes unfocused. He was drunk, which always made him more unpredictable, more dangerous. "I have a long drive back," I said firmly, trying to step around him. But Michael blocked my path. "Come on, sis. Loosen up. Have a drink with us, for old time's sake." I knew this routine, the forced camaraderie that would inevitably lead to some form of public humiliation. I had fallen for it too many times in the past. "No thanks, Michael. I really need to go." His face hardened, the mask of friendliness slipping to reveal the cruelty beneath. Still the same uptight Emma. Some things never change. I walked away, heading toward the sliding glass door that led back into the house. I just needed to grab my purse from the living room, say a quick goodbye to my parents, and I could escape this toxic environment. But fate, or perhaps Michael's malice, had other plans. To reach the house, I needed to cross a section of the new pool deck. As I stepped onto the wooden boards, I immediately sensed something was wrong. The surface felt strangely slick beneath my flats. I glanced down and noticed a slight sheen on the wood, almost imperceptible, unless you were looking for it. In that moment, I knew what was about to happen, but it was already too late to prevent it. My foot slid forward violently, throwing me off balance. I tried to catch myself, arms flailing, but the slipperiness was too complete, too deliberate. My other foot shot out from under me, and I felt my body falling backward. Time seemed to slow down. I could see Michael and his friends watching, their expressions a mixture of anticipation and cruel amusement. I could see my father turning from the grill, my mother pausing in her conversation with another guest. And then came the impact, not with the wooden deck as I had expected, but with the concrete lip of the pool. My lower back and head struck simultaneously, a double blow that sent shooting pain up my spine and exploded like fireworks behind my eyes. I heard someone scream, and only later would I realize the sound had come from me. The world tilted and spun, colors blurring together as my vision swam in and out of focus. When things finally stabilized, I was lying flat on my back, staring up at the clear blue sky. The pain in my head was excruciating. But what terrified me more was what I could not feel anything below my waist. "Help!" I gasped, my voice barely audible even to my own ears. The impact had knocked the wind out of me, and I was struggling to breathe properly. "Please help me. I cannot feel my legs." The first face that appeared in my field of vision was Michael's. He was looming over me, and to my horror, he was smiling. "Nice pratfall, sis. Very dramatic." He turned to his friends. "She always was a theater kid." I tried to move to sit up, but my body would not cooperate. My arms worked, but when I attempted to shift my legs, there was nothing. No response, no sensation, just a terrifying void where the lower half of my body should have been. "I am serious," I said, my voice stronger now, edged with panic. "Something is wrong. I cannot move my legs. I think I hit my back on the concrete." Michael rolled his eyes, still convinced this was some kind of performance on my part. "Come on, get up. You are embarrassing yourself." "I cannot get up." I was crying now, tears of pain and fear streaming down my face. "Please call an ambulance. I think I am really hurt." By this point, a small crowd had gathered around me. I could see curiosity and discomfort on their faces, but no one was moving to help. They were taking their cues from Michael, assuming this was just another family drama playing out for their entertainment. My father pushed through the onlookers, his face set in a mask of irritation. "What is going on here, Emma? Why are you on the ground?" "Dad!" I sobbed, relief washing over me. Surely my father would take this seriously. I slipped and fell. I hit my back on the pool ledge. I cannot feel my legs. I need to go to the hospital. I expected concern, urgency, immediate action. What I got instead was a dismissive scoff. "For God's sake, Emma, the deck is perfectly safe. I just had it installed by professionals." He gestured impatiently. "Walk it off. Stop being a baby. You are making a scene at your brother's party." The words hit me like a physical blow. Even now, even when I was literally unable to move, my pain was being dismissed, my experience invalidated. "Richard, maybe we should help her up," my mother suggested, appearing at his side. But her concern was not for my well-being. "People are watching." "I cannot get up," I repeated, my voice rising with desperation. "I need an ambulance. Please, Mom." "Dad, I am begging you. Something is seriously wrong." My mother knelt beside me, her voice lowered to an angry whisper. "Emma Anderson, that is enough. You have always been jealous of your brother's attention, but this is taking things too far. You are ruining his birthday party with this performance." I could not believe what I was hearing. The pain in my back was intensifying, radiating outward in waves that made it difficult to concentrate. My head was throbbing where it had struck the concrete, and I was starting to feel nauseated. "I think I'm going to be sick," I moaned, turning my head to the side. "She is probably drunk," I heard Michael tell someone. "Classic Emma, cannot handle her alcohol." I had not had a single drink all day, but facts had never mattered in my family's narrative about me. The sun beating down on my face was making the nausea worse. I was sweating profusely, and a strange tingling sensation had started in my fingertips. I knew these were bad signs, possibly indicators of shock or internal bleeding. "Please," I whispered, no longer having the energy to shout. "I need help." My father had walked away, returning to the grill as if nothing was happening. My mother was making excuses to the guests, telling them I had always been prone to episodes and that they should continue enjoying the party. Michael had lost interest entirely, moving back to his group of friends, who were now loudly discussing plans to take the new jet ski out the following weekend. I was alone, immobile in agony, surrounded by people who were choosing to ignore my suffering. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical pain ever could. Then, from the edge of my fading consciousness, I heard a new voice, firm, authoritative female. "Excuse me, I am a nurse. Let me through, please." The crowd parted, and a woman I did not recognize knelt beside me. She had kind eyes and capable hands that immediately went to my wrist, checking my pulse. "Hi there, I am Lisa. I work in the ER at Hartford Hospital. Can you tell me your name?" "Emma," I managed to say through chattering teeth. I was cold now, despite the summer heat. "Okay, Emma. I need you to stay very still. Can you tell me what happened?" I explained about the fall, the impact with the pool edge, and the immediate loss of sensation in my legs. Lisa's expression remained neutral, but I could see concern in her eyes. She leaned closer and spoke quietly. "I'm going to check a few things, but I do not want you to move at all. Okay?" She gently pressed her fingers against various points on my legs and asking if I could feel the pressure. I could not. She asked me to wiggle my toes. Nothing happened. "I'm calling an ambulance," she announced, pulling out her phone. "She does not need an ambulance," my mother protested, suddenly reappearing. "She just needs to get up and stop making a fuss." Lisa fixed my mother with a level stare. "Ma'am, your daughter has signs consistent with a spinal cord injury. Moving her could cause permanent damage. She needs emergency medical attention immediately." For the first time, a flicker of real concern crossed my mother's face. "Spinal cord injury? That is impossible. She just slipped. Falls are one of the most common causes of spinal injuries," Lisa replied, already dialing 911. "And from what I can see, she hit the concrete edge quite hard." As Lisa spoke with the emergency dispatcher describing my condition and location, I saw my father approaching. His expression had shifted from annoyance to apprehension. "What is all this about an ambulance?" he demanded. Lisa, still on the phone, held up a hand to silence him. After giving the dispatcher the necessary information, she turned to address my father. "Sir, your daughter has potentially suffered a serious spinal injury. The paramedics will be here in about 10 minutes. Until then, it is absolutely crucial that she not be moved." My father's face paled. For the first time, I think he was beginning to realize that this was not an act, not an attempt to steal attention or disrupt the party. This was real, and it was serious. "How did this happen?" he asked, looking around as if searching for someone to blame other than himself. Through the fog of pain and fear, I managed to speak. The deck was slippery, like it had oil or something on it. My father's eyes narrowed. "That is ridiculous. I just had it sealed yesterday. It should not be slippery at all." But Lisa, ever observant, was already examining the wooden boards near where I had fallen. She touched the surface, then rubbed her fingers together. "This is not water," she said, her voice hardening. "This feels like some kind of lubricant." All eyes turned to Michael, who had wandered back over to see what the commotion was about. His face, flushed from alcohol, suddenly drained of color. "It was just a joke," he muttered, not meeting anyone's gaze. "Just a little prank. I put some of Dad's deck oil on a few boards. I thought she would slip a little and maybe fall in the pool. I did not think—" He trailed off, the implications of his actions finally seeming to dawn on him. The silence that followed was deafening. In that moment, as I lay immobile on the ground, I saw the truth of my family reflected in their faces. The casual cruelty that had defined our relationships, the willful blindness to the harm they caused, the reflexive protection of Michael at all costs. But this time, there would be consequences they could not ignore away. In the distance, I could hear sirens approaching. The wailing sirens grew louder, cutting through the stunned silence that had fallen over the backyard. Lisa remained by my side, monitoring my condition and keeping everyone else at a distance. "Try to stay calm," she said softly. "Help is almost here. Just focus on your breathing." I was trying, but panic kept threatening to overwhelm me. The numbness in my lower body was terrifying a void where sensation should be. Each breath sent new waves of pain through my back and head, and the nausea was intensifying. The party guests had begun to disperse, moving away from the scene of the accident, murmuring among themselves. Some were already leaving, not wanting to be involved in whatever was unfolding. Others watched from a distance, their expressions a mixture of morbid curiosity and discomfort. My mother hovered nearby, her earlier dismissiveness replaced by a nervous energy. She kept straightening her clothes, touching her hair, small gestures that betrayed her anxiety about how this would appear to others. "Do you really think this is necessary?" she asked Lisa. "Maybe we could just take her to urgent care ourselves." Lisa's response was firm. "Absolutely not. She needs proper immobilization and transport. Any improper movement could worsen a spinal injury." My father had gone to the front of the houses to direct the paramedics, while Michael stood frozen several feet away, the reality of what he had done finally seeming to sink in. The paramedics arrived with remarkable efficiency. 2 women and a man in uniforms wheeling a stretcher through the gate to the backyard. Lisa immediately briefed them on my condition and the circumstances of my fall. The lead paramedic, a woman named Jennifer, according to her name tag, knelt beside me. "Hello, Emma. I am Jennifer. We are going to take good care of you. Can you tell me where the pain is worst?" "My lower back," I managed to say, "and my head, but I cannot feel anything below my waist." Jennifer nodded, her expression professional but kind. "We are going to put a cervical collar on you to stabilize your neck, and then we will carefully roll you onto a backboard. It is important that you do not try to help us move you. Okay, just stay as still as possible." As they worked, Jennifer asked questions about the fall, how it happened, and whether I had lost consciousness. Lisa filled in details about my vital signs and the initial assessment she had done. Then Jennifer asked a question that changed everything. "Was the surface where you fell naturally slippery, or was there something on it that caused you to slip?" Before I could answer, Lisa spoke up. "There appears to be some kind of oil or lubricant on the deck boards. I believe it was placed there deliberately." Jennifer paused in her work, looking up sharply. "Deliberately? Can you elaborate on that?" "Her brother admitted to putting deck oil on the boards as a prank," Lisa said, her voice level, but with an undercurrent of anger. "He intended for her to slip." Jennifer and the other paramedics exchanged glances. Then Jennifer turned to look at Michael, who was standing with his hands shoved in his pockets, staring at the ground. "Sir, is that accurate? Did you intentionally create a slipping hazard that caused this injury?" Michael shifted uncomfortably. "It was just supposed to be a joke. I did not think she would get hurt like this." Jennifer's expression hardened. She turned to her colleague. "Danny, can you check the deck surface and document what you find, please?" Danny nodded and moved to examine the area where I had fallen, taking photos with a small camera and collecting a sample of the substance on the deck. Meanwhile, the paramedics continued working methodically to immobilize me. They placed a rigid collar around my neck, then carefully positioned themselves to roll me as a unit onto the backboard. "On my count," Jennifer instructed. 1, 2, 3. They moved me with practiced precision, but despite their care, the movement sent fresh agony through my body. I cried out, unable to suppress the sound. "I know it hurts," Jennifer said sympathetically. "We will give you something for the pain as soon as we have you secured." Once I was strapped to the backboard, they transferred me to the stretcher and began attaching monitoring equipment. Jennifer placed an oxygen mask over my face and inserted an IV line into my arm. "Your blood pressure is quite low," she noted, frowning at the monitor. "And your heart rate is elevated. We need to get you to the hospital right away." My mother finally seemed to grasp the severity of the situation. "Is she going to be all right?" she asked, her voice small. Jennifer did not offer false reassurance. "She has signs consistent with a significant spinal injury. The sooner we get her to a trauma center, the better her chances for recovery." As they prepared to move me to the ambulance, Danny returned from inspecting the deck. He spoke quietly to Jennifer, showing her something on his camera screen. Her expression grew even more serious. "Based on what I am seeing here, and the circumstances described, I am going to request police assistance," she announced. "Police?" my father sputtered, returning from the front yard. "Surely that is not necessary. This was just an unfortunate accident." Jennifer fixed him with a level gaze. "Sir, deliberately creating a hazardous condition that results in serious injury is not just an accident. Additionally, I understand there was a delay in seeking medical attention for your daughter. Despite her reporting loss of sensation, which is a medical emergency." My father's face flushed with anger. "Now wait just a minute. You cannot come into my home and make accusations like that." "Dad," I said weakly from behind the oxygen mask, "please just let them help me." For once, my father fell silent. Jennifer made a call on her radio requesting police presence at the scene. Then she turned back to me. "We are going to move you to the ambulance now. The ride might be uncomfortable, but we will do everything we can to keep you stable." As they wheeled me through the house and out to the waiting ambulance, I caught a final glimpse of my family. My father arguing with Danny, gesturing angrily. My mother standing with her arms wrapped around herself, looking lost. and Michael still rooted to the same spot, watching as the consequences of his lifelong cruelty finally caught up with him. The last thing I saw before the ambulance doors closed was a police cruiser pulling into the driveway, lights flashing, but sirens silent. In that moment, despite the pain and fear, I felt a strange sense of validation. For the first time in my life, someone was taking my suffering seriously. The ambulance pulled away, carrying me toward an uncertain future, but also away from the toxic environment that had caused me so much pain. As the medication they administered began to take effect, dulling the worst of the physical agony, I closed my eyes and surrendered to unconsciousness. I awoke to the rhythmic beeping of hospital monitors and the antiseptic smell that seems universal to all medical facilities. For a moment, I was disoriented, unsure of where I was or how I had gotten there. Then the memories came flooding back. The fall, the numbness, the paramedics, and finally the police arriving at my parents' house. A nurse noticed I was awake and approached my bedside. "Welcome back, Emma. I am Marcus. You are at Yale New Haven Hospital. Do you remember what happened?" "I fell." I said, my voice raspy from the breathing tube that had apparently been removed at some point at my brother's birthday party. I could not feel my legs. Marcus nodded, making a note in my chart. "That is right. You have been in and out of consciousness for about 12 hours now. The doctor will be in shortly to discuss your condition with you. Can I get you some water?" I nodded gratefully, and he helped me take small sips through a straw. Even this simple movement caused pain to flare in my back. "What is wrong with me?" I asked, fear making my voice tremble. "Can I still not move my legs?" Marcus's expression was compassionate but professional. "The doctor will explain everything. She should be here any minute. Try to stay calm." As if on cue, a woman in a white coat entered the room. She was in her 50s, with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a neat bun. "Good morning, Emma. I am Dr. Rodriguez, the neurosurgeon who has been overseeing your care. How are you feeling?" "Scared," I admitted, "and in pain. What happened to me? Why can I not feel my legs?" Dr. Rodriguez pulled up a chair and sat beside my bed. "When you fell, you suffered what we call an incomplete spinal cord injury at the T12L1 section, which is in your lower back. The impact fractured 2 vertebrae and caused significant compression of your spinal cord." She showed me images from my MRI on a tablet pointing out the damaged areas. "We performed emergency surgery to remove bone fragments and reduce the pressure on your spinal cord. We also stabilized your spine with rods and screws. Will I walk again?" I asked the question that had been terrifying me since the moment I lost sensation in my legs. Dr. Rodriguez did not offer false hope, but neither did she extinguish it entirely. Spinal cord injuries are complex, and outcomes can vary widely. The fact that yours is an incomplete injury is actually positive news. It means the spinal cord was not completely severed. She continued explaining that over the coming weeks and months, we would get a clearer picture of how much function I might recover. Some patients with similar injuries regain significant mobility, while others experience more limited improvement. A lot will depend on your individual healing process and how diligently you work with physical therapy. "So I might be paralyzed forever." The words felt surreal coming out of my mouth. "I would not use the term forever at this stage," Dr. Rodriguez replied carefully. "But yes, you are currently experiencing paraplegia, which is paralysis affecting the lower limbs. We will work with you to maximize whatever recovery is possible, but you should be prepared for the possibility of long-term mobility challenges." The news hit me like a physical blow. I had entered my brother's birthday party as a healthy 28-year-old woman, and I was leaving it with a life-altering disability. All because of a prank, and my family's refusal to take my pain seriously. "There is something else we need to discuss," Dr. Rodriguez said, her tone shifting slightly. "The circumstances of your injury have prompted an investigation. There are 2 police officers waiting to speak with you when you feel up to it." I closed my eyes briefly, absorbing this information. "My brother put oil on the deck. He admitted it. He wanted me to slip as a joke." Dr. Rodriguez nodded. "That is consistent with the information we received from the paramedics, and there seems to be some concern about the delay in seeking medical attention for you after the injury occurred." My parents did not believe I was really hurt. I said, the familiar pain of their dismissal washing over me again. They told me to walk it off. They accused me of being dramatic and trying to ruin Michael's party. A flash of something anger perhaps crossed Dr. Rodriguez's professional demeanor. In cases of suspected spinal cord injury, immediate immobilization and medical attention are crucial. Delays can significantly worsen the outcome. Are you saying that if they had called an ambulance right away, I might not be paralyzed? The implications of this were almost too much to bear. It is impossible to say with certainty, she replied carefully. But yes, in general, the sooner a spinal cord injury is treated, the better the prognosis. Every minute counts. I felt tears spilling down my cheeks. The injury itself was devastating enough, but knowing it might have been less severe if my family had simply believed me was an additional layer of betrayal I was not prepared for. Dr. Rodriguez gave me a moment to process, then asked, "Do you feel up to speaking with the police now, or would you prefer to rest first?" "I will talk to them," I decided. "I want them to know what happened." She nodded and left to get the officers. Marcus stayed adjusting my position slightly to make me more comfortable and offering tissues for my tears. The police officers who entered were both women, which somehow made me feel safer. They introduced themselves as Detective Walsh and Officer Thompson, explaining that they were investigating the circumstances surrounding my injury. Detective Walsh sat beside my hospital bed, while Officer Thompson stood at the foot, both of them with notepads out. Their demeanor was calm but focused. "Emma, we're very sorry this happened to you," Walsh began. "We'd like to ask you some questions about what happened at your brother's party, particularly about how you fell and the events that followed. Is that all right?" I nodded. "Yes, I want to give a full statement. I don't want this to happen to anyone else." "Take your time," she said gently. "Let's start with what led up to the fall." I described everything in detail, how Michael had intercepted me as I tried to leave the way he was drunk, his history of bullying me, and how the deck felt slick underfoot. I told them about seeing that strange sheen just before I slipped, about the moment of impact, the immediate numbness, and the sheer horror of realizing I couldn't move. "And when did your brother admit to putting oil on the deck?" Thompson asked, her pen poised. "Right after Lisa, the nurse checked the surface and said something felt off. That's when Michael muttered it was just a joke, that he only wanted me to fall into the pool." Walsh glanced at her partner. Lisa already gave a statement to the responding officers. "It matches yours so far." She said Michael appeared intoxicated and that both your parents initially dismissed your injury. I swallowed hard. They did more than dismiss it. They mocked me. My mother accused me of trying to steal attention from Michael. My father said I was being dramatic and told me to walk it off. "Did anyone attempt to move you before the paramedics arrived?" "No," I said. "Only because Lisa insisted no one touch me. If she hadn't been there..." I trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Officer Thompson nodded solemnly. "You're lucky she was." Walsh leaned forward. "Emma, your brother's actions and your parents' inaction may result in criminal charges. Michael could be facing aggravated assault or reckless endangerment, possibly more depending on the DA's assessment." "What about my parents?" I asked quietly. "For not calling for help, for ignoring everything I said." "That falls under criminal negligence," she explained, "especially considering the delay may have worsened your condition. We're coordinating with medical experts to understand the full extent." The room fell silent for a beat. "Do you want to press charges?" Walsh asked, looking me in the eye. My answer came faster than I expected. "Yes," I said, my voice clear. "Yes, I do." Because for the first time in my life, someone had finally asked me what I wanted, and I wasn't going to waste the moment. I was transferred to a rehabilitation center just outside New Haven. The days were long and grueling: physical therapy, occupational therapy, pain management, but they were also strangely empowering. Each session was a battle between what my body couldn't yet do and what I believed it could someday regain. I clung to Dr. Rodriguez's words like a mantra. Incomplete injury, hope remains. The day I moved my left toe ever so slightly, everyone in the room cried. Even I did. Not because it guaranteed I'd walk again, but because it reminded me that progress was possible. Meanwhile, the legal case was moving forward. Michael had been arrested and released on bail. The charge was first-degree reckless endangerment with potential enhancement due to bodily injury. The investigators were also reviewing potential charges for tampering with property, and my attorney was preparing a civil suit for damages. My parents, on the other hand, issued a formal statement through their lawyer denying any wrongdoing. We were misled by the nature of the fall and genuinely believed our daughter was not seriously injured, it read. We are heartbroken and hope for her full recovery. They hadn't visited me once, but Lisa had. Twice. She even brought flowers the second time and said she was testifying on my behalf if needed. You saved my life, I told her. You saved your own, she replied. I just made sure people finally listened. I gave my testimony in a courtroom packed with Michael's friends, a few reporters, and unsurprisingly, neither of my parents. Michael sat at the defense table in a suit too expensive for someone who had never worked a real job in his life. He wouldn't look at me, but that was fine. I wasn't speaking to him. I was speaking to the court, to the world. I was paralyzed because of a prank, I said calmly. A joke, that's what my brother called it. But for me, it was a sentence. A theft of mobility, of safety, of dignity. And the worst part, it wasn't an accident. It was the result of years of being ignored, minimized, and dismissed. The room was still when I finished, not even a cough. Michael's sentencing was scheduled for the following month. It's been 4 months. I am still in a wheelchair, still in rehab. But I have sensation in both thighs and some control in my hips. The doctors say I may walk again, though it won't be the way I used to. But the most important part, I'm free. Free from the invisible chains of a family who never saw me. Free from the lie that their love was unconditional. Free to build a new kind of strength, one rooted not in denial or cruelty, but in truth. And if you're watching this, yes, you've ever felt like your voice didn't matter, like your pain was too inconvenient for those around you, let me be the one to say, I believe you, and you deserve better. Story 2. My wife returned for my fortune after betraying me and taking my children. She arrived now to take my millions. However, I made a single move that destroyed her flawless strategy. I'm a 34-year-old man who needs to vent about this bizarre incident. Due to the fact that the past several years have resembled a poor Netflix drama. But I did experience it myself. I've been putting this all down in writing for a while, but now it's time. I suppose I should give some backstory first. In college, I was your average computer science geek, the type who could code for 12 hours straight and basically lived off energy drinks. I received my degree from a respectable public university in the Northeast. It wasn't MIT or something similar. I started working for a tiny tech business that was attempting to develop cloud security software as soon as I graduated. Let's just say it was one of those usual 5 men in a small work startups. But I won't go into too much detail so as not to dox myself. Initially, the salary wasn't great, roughly $65,000 annually in a somewhat pricey city. But they did provide stock options. I decided it was worth the risk, and I'll talk more about it later. Furthermore, the founders gave off the impression that they were genuinely knowledgeable. In contrast, several of the other firms I spoke with were essentially consuming all of the venture capital funds. I met Amy here, albeit that's definitely not her true name. It was the most cliched and adorable thing ever. We had a major deployment the night before, so I was barely getting 2 hours of sleep when I was at this neighborhood coffee shop close to our workplace. I completely spilled my coffee on her MacBook. She was really easygoing about it, even though I felt like such a fool. In the end, I got her a new one. My credit card was maxed up, but it was worthwhile. LOL. That eventually led to getting drinks, which in turn led to dating. At the time, Amy was employed as a dental hygienist. Very intelligent, humorous, and undoubtedly superior to me in terms of appearance. We simply clicked. Do you know? When I babbled on about code, she genuinely looked interested, and I enjoyed hearing her tell me about the dentist office's nightmare patients. After dating for 2 years, we were married. It was a simple ceremony held in her parents' garden. We paid a down payment on a modest starter house in the suburbs, using the majority of our funds. Although the 45-minute trip each way was awful, the schools were wonderful and we were planning ahead. After that, children came around really quickly. Max was born in 2019 and Lily in 2016. To be honest, those initial years were difficult, juggling a startup job with diaper changes and midnight feedings. On some days, I honestly couldn't remember if I had taken a shower or not. However, Amy was fantastic with the children. In order to spend more time at home, she reduced her hours at the dentist office, and we managed to make it work. Slowly but gradually, the startup was expanding. We went from working with 5 men to a big workplace with about 50 workers. I was promoted to engineering manager and then lead developer. The stock options continued to vest. At $0.50 a share, I owned around 200,000 shares. To be honest, I assumed they would be worthless, like most startup shares, but I decided to have them on hand anyhow. With a pleasant neighborhood, good schools, and yearly family trips to Disney, we had a rather wonderful existence. It wasn't very costly, but the children adored it. Our neighbors were also cool. In the summer, many young families host block parties, the whole fantasy of living in the suburbs. Amy befriended every other mother. While our children had playdates, I would go out for drinks with a few of the parents. A typical, dull, contented life. Then in 2021, Mike and Jessica took up residence next door. Mike aspired to be a fitness influencer. You are aware of the type. He consistently shares footage of his workouts in his garage on Instagram, arranged similarly to a CrossFit facility. Initially quite amiable, always willing to provide a hand with household tasks and other things. Mike spent a lot of the day at home working on his brand or whatever because Jessica had long hours at a city legal company. I can see all the warning signs today, but you overlook things when you're juggling 2 small children and 50 to 60-hour work weeks, trying to keep a business afloat during COVID. Or perhaps you see them but choose not to accept it. After having the children, Amy said she wanted to be in shape, so she started going to the gym at Mike's garage. She began going out with makeup on. Who does that? She would return full of energy and giggles. At first, I honestly thought it was good. She had more energy and was happy. God, I was a fool. Next door Mike is obsessed with CrossFit. You know, it started off as simple things. For example, he would be assisting Amy with moving furniture or repairing something in our backyard when I got home from work. By the way, you're always shirtless, since apparently having abs makes clothes uncool. We were attempting to seal this big transaction with a big tech business, so I was working insane hours at the startup. Think Fiang level, but I can't mention names. Deadlines were crazy, and we had a ton of security features to develop. I was working 14-hour days for a few weeks. Essentially, I only saw the children on the weekends. At first, Amy seemed to comprehend, but then the remarks began. Mike advises you to schedule family time. Mike believes that work-life balance is crucial. Yes, Amy. That's a great tale, but Mike's company is Instagramming gym selfies, and my work genuinely covers our mortgage. After that, she became really interested in exercise. And by really into it, I mean completely enamored. Due to the need that everything be organic and grass-fed, our food cost abruptly increased. She began purchasing all of the high-end vitamins that Mike suggested. Our kitchen had the appearance of a GNC, vomited in it. The exercise routine also becomes strange. At regular times, it used to happen around 3 times a week instead of daily, whenever I was with the children or at work. She had started wearing cosmetics to work out after returning from the gym, wet after taking a shower flushed, and sporting joyful hair. Who in heck does that? Apparently her old Target leggings were no longer up to standard, so she purchased all this pricey Lululemon gear. The strangest things, however, began with her phone. Amy had never been much of a techie. She would carelessly leave her phone in strange locations. All of a sudden, she's always texting and tilting the screen away from me as she's addicted to it 24/7. She refused to share her new password with me. Not because we were spying, but rather in case of an emergency involving the children, we used to know one another's passwords. This worst thing, she became quite combative about everything. For example, she would yell at me, "I never help with meal planning," when I asked what she wanted for supper. Or she could roll her eyes if I tried to discuss my workday. It's not all about your valuable startup. Actual Hyde and Jekyll. While Max and I were playing in the backyard one day, Mike caught a glimpse of Amy working out through their garage window. In order to assist her with her form or whatever the guy was physically mashed up against her, Max says, "Mommy and Mike are best friends," and waves. Yes, friend, I'm sure they are. I made an effort to speak with her about it, telling her that I felt strange about the amount of time she was spending there. A huge error. She went completely crazy, began yelling that I was jealous and in charge, how I was never home anyhow, and how I was attempting to prevent her from making friends. What made me care then? Then she began inciting arguments about money. The startup was not making much money. Although we were still growing, we were at ease. All of a sudden, nothing was sufficient. She needed a new automobile and wanted to remodel the kitchen, wished to enroll Lily in a posh private school. She would give me the look of someone who didn't understand me when I described the difference between stock options and startup salaries. In hindsight, I ought to have anticipated this. I became aware of strange charges on our credit card, upscale dining establishments. I have never paid for a motel in our own city. 20 minutes from home, who needs a hotel? I never saw her wearing anything from that lingerie store. The child began to behave differently from Lily. 8 changed from a cheerful, talkative child to a rather reserved one. No more than 5. Became needy and would weep every time I left for work. I once overheard him discussing with his stuffed animals that Mike and Mommy are staying over while Daddy is at work. That did really strike like a truck. I arrived home early one evening due to a delay in our deployment. Amy's car was in the driveway, but the house was dark. Mike's garage gym was playing music when I heard it. I thought I may try to make things clear as I went over. Speak to men. Yes, that's not what I discovered. I won't get into specifics, but let's just say that Amy's exercise regimen was undoubtedly not fitness-oriented. As usual, Mike's wife Jessica was working late at her legal practice. I simply recorded a video using my phone and left for home without confronting them. For over an hour, I just sat in my car digesting. I spoke with a lawyer after calling in ill the next day. The man advised me to pretend everything was okay, while they were actually going about their business next door. Act normal, gather proof, and keep them in the dark about the most trying week of my life. I thus had the footage of Amy and Mike working out stored in around 6 separate locations. That weekend, when my parents could take the kids, I was going to approach Amy. I had everything planned. Amy and Mike had their own plan and relocated first, but divorce papers were prepared and all the evidence was documented. It was just another Tuesday. I was working. When my team lead texts me to come to HR, I'm knee-deep in code reviews. Strange, but not entirely out of the ordinary, considering all the discussions around the Amazon takeover. 2 police officers are waiting when I enter. As it turned out, Amy had reported that I had hit her during a fight about money and had gone to the police that morning with bruises. She said that when she challenged me about working too much, I had lost control. She even had photos of her face and arms with injuries. I was arrested by the police at the office. The most embarrassing experience of my life, being placed in handcuffs in front of my colleagues. Before my brother was able to post bail, I was detained for 48 hours. I couldn't access my work laptop, and I misplaced my phone. Company policy about arrests. Amy filed for an emergency restraining order, which prevented me from returning home. I had to wear an ankle monitor and sleep on my brother's couch, like a criminal of some sort. I was placed on administrative leave by the firm. It's a kind way of saying, you're fired, but we'll hold off until the PR nightmare is over. 15 years, without any issues. Got no parking tickets at all. I'm a domestic abuser all of a sudden. The local news featured my face. Due to domestic abuse, a local tech executive was arrested. Yes, things went really well with prospective employers. This is when things get really fouled up. This had been planned for weeks by Amy and Mike. Later on, I discovered that they had been recording all of our disagreements or casual discussions. They twisted photographing Amy whenever she knocked against anything and sustained a bruise. She is quite awkward. This entire fictitious history of abuse has always been constructed. They even enlisted the help of a few other local mothers. All of a sudden, the people I had barbecued with and whose children had celebrated their birthdays at our house began sending affidavits expressing their suspicions that I was aggressive and that they had overheard arguments from our home. Yes, because Amy was yelling at 6 in the morning about CrossFit. One even said she witnessed me violently grabbing Amy's arm as I was carrying groceries out of the car. She had hurt her wrist doing something with Mike, so I was assisting her with carrying her stuff. The worst thing, CPS became involved. Amy was granted temporary custody of the children. I was permitted to have 2-hour supervised visits every other weekend instead of seeing my kids every day. Do you realize how dysfunctional it is to have to watch your own children in a gloomy government office? While a social worker records every conversation, to pay for a lawyer, I had to sell out some of my stock options. According to the company's bylaws, I could keep the remainder if I had worked there for more than 5 years. I suppose we should thank God for little mercies. All I could afford after paying child support and court expenses was this dreary studio apartment next to my brother's house. During visits, Lily refused to even look at me. I learned that Amy had informed her that I was mentally ill and that I needed to recover before I could return home. Max would simply cry and inquire as to why I had lost my affection for them. Attempt to explain accusations of domestic abuse to a 5-year-old. Actually, it's not feasible, so don't. I also lost the majority of my buddies. It's funny how individuals vanish after being accused of something similar. Most of the men who stayed were co-workers who had witnessed the sacrifices I had made for my family. They were aware of the truth, but the ongoing legal proceedings prevented them from taking action. Mike and Amy, however, were no longer even attempting to conceal it. He had left his home with Jessica, who reportedly had her own problems, after she learned everything. They were behaving like the ideal couple, going out to restaurants, sharing gym pictures together, and financing their little romance with my child support money. In order to make ends meet, I had to start taking Uber rides on the weekends. Went from being in charge of engineering teams to taking up inebriated college students at 2 a.m. The irony interns from my previous employer were among my passengers. Make an effort to remain composed when a 22-year-old is discussing the fantastic project from which you were dismissed. I mentioned stock options. Do you recall them? The ones I had to cash out in part to cover the cost of the lawyers. Yes, things become crazy at this point. Let me first give you a picture of the bottom of the world. The 400-square-foot studio apartment where I was residing had the fragrance of the previous occupants. 50 cats worked 2 jobs and had a celebration. During the day, a junior developer works at a corporate hellhole, the only company that would consider hiring me, although my DV charge is still pending. In order to pay child support, an Uber driver at night eats peanut butter sandwiches and noodles. Because of lockup periods, I was unable to sell the roughly 200,000 shares of stock I still owned in my former business. The startup was performing fairly well, surviving but not terrific. Our security software assisted businesses in managing their cloud infrastructure. Boring technology. Though nothing significant, I am aware that Amazon Web Services has been snooping around for some time. Then for non-techies, Log4j appeared. Imagine if someone managed to exploit a small vulnerability to access the computer systems of nearly every business. No one took attention. Log4j is that. It just so happened that our program was quite effective in locating and repairing that hole. The right moment, the perfect location. On a random Tuesday, I was checking my phone in between Uber rides when I noticed that there were about 50 missed calls. AWS is acquiring these firms. In the takeover, stocks went from $4 to $247 per share. I felt I was having hallucinations, so I performed the calculations about 20 times. Before taxes, $49.4 million is equivalent to 200,000 shares times $247. I threw up as my first action. My lawyer is the second item. The third creature puked once again. This is where the fun begins. Local news outlets covered the acquisition story. Amazon paid $2.1 billion for the acquisition of a local IT business. Somewhere in there was my name, as one of the first workers. Who do you think reads the local tech news? Amy's attorney. I received this email from Amy within a day. It's the first since the arrest. Like we're still best friends or something, all lovely and worried. Hello, I hope all is well with you. Been considering our predicament. Perhaps we ought to discuss what's best for the children. Translation. I've heard you've become wealthy. I'll get my claws in now. I didn't answer. After sending my lawyer a screenshot, I returned to my Uber shift. Have to maintain appearances. Typical, as everything was completed. Closing the deal would take 3 months. Additionally, I didn't want Amy to start trouble before then. Amy wasn't finished, though. Mike set up my usual coffee shop the following day. Completely coincidence. Correct tries to be a good friend. Buddy. Hey dude, it's water under the bridge. Everybody makes errors. Amy sincerely apologizes for everything. I apologize. She said I had beaten her, wrecked my reputation, had me imprisoned, and removed my children. But let's be buddies now that I'm worth millions. What an easy shift of heart. I continued to drive for Uber until the transaction was finalized. The expressions on travelers' faces when they recognized me from news reports. Priceless. You're that guy, right? Who? Yes. That's Mimi, your Uber millionaire. It seemed unreal the day the money appeared in my account. My total after taxes and fees was around 28 million. I started by purchasing a simple 3-bedroom home in a gated neighborhood. It wasn't very fancy, but it was in the child's school district and had adequate security. I put $2 million each in trust for Lily and Max's education expenses. Until they become 25, they are unable to touch it. In order to stay occupied and have a reliable source of income, I launched a modest software consulting firm. The transaction wasn't unexpected. Some of my former colleagues who had supported me through everything were employed. Then Amy took the initiative. At my new home, I was served papers. Since we were still legally married when the value of the stock rose, she demanded half of the acquisition funds. Since it goes without saying that a violent abuser shouldn't have millions to spend on children plus back child support, is computed using my new net worth in primary custody. Ironically, I would have been jailed and forced to cash out some shares early if she hadn't set me up. She might have had half of it. However, there is an amusing aspect to charges of documented domestic violence. She arrived on a Sunday morning at my new home. Since the court dates, I hadn't seen her in person. Wearing this modest Target dress and looking quite depressed. Not like the Lululemon she usually wears. Everything. Her eyes were swollen, as if she had been sobbing, and she hardly wore makeup. "Can we have a conversation?" she queries, as if we were in a Lifetime film. The children are the focus. With her, it's always about the children. It's funny that she was preoccupied with ruining their father's life and neglected them. But I opened the door for her. I had my phone recording in my pocket and security cameras all around the place. Problems with trust, no. Only experience. She sobs as she sits in my living room lamenting Mike's manipulation of her. He had apparently persuaded her that I was unfaithful. Forecast. A lot. Said I was going to take the kids and leave her broke. Rich from the man who actually assisted in setting me up for abuse. She cried because he was so domineering. I filed the charges because of him. I felt bewildered and afraid. Yes, Amy, those bruises just materialized out of thin air. Additionally, the witness statements were self-evident. The real kicker comes next. Despite my mistakes, I am still legally your wife. During our marriage, the value of the shares rose. I'm entitled to half for the children. Hell, this lady almost destroyed my job, stole my children, had me arrested, and now wants half of my money. In fact, the audacity is amazing. You are missed by the children. She goes on, seeing my response. We may reunite as a family. Make a new beginning. Yes, as nothing says, new beginning. Like unfounded accusations of domestic abuse. She talked about going to therapy and doubting how she had discovered her flaws, demonstrating that she had prepared the speech. Yes, how the true abuser had been Mike. Ironic. She even mentioned the coffee shop where we had our first date. As if traveling down memory lane would cause me to forget everything. My phone keeps exploding up when she's speaking. It turns out that when the money came in, she informed her lawyer that she was trying to make amends and create a story about us working things out. She begins with the waterworks next. On how difficult it has been to live in a little flat. Karma, who works additional hours at the dentist office, is a bitch. Oh no, the kids' activities are not affordable for actual job. Perhaps stop spending $200 on leggings. She responds, I never wanted any of this. Mike gave me the impression that you were a monster. I know now, though, that he was the true monster. Correct. Because in order to prepare complex abuse claims, Mike had her cheat for months. At work, I got arrested 3 times for stealing my children. 5. Purchased 6 gym equipment items with my child support. Everybody we knew was told lies. The finest part, though, comes after. She takes out her phone and shows me current photos of the children that I hadn't seen before, due to, access restrictions. Lily at her presentation of dance. Max is playing soccer. Every moment I had missed. She says they need their father. This is something we can resolve. Interpretation. I have no money. You're wealthy. Let's pretend your life wasn't ruined by me. Then she reveals the secret. I spoke with my attorney. I have rights if we are unable to resolve this. The value of the stock rose while we were married, in addition to your past domestic abuse. It's there, the danger that was causing the tears. Amy Classic. I gave her time to complete her act, even provided her with some Kleenex, the rough, inexpensive ones, not the posh, soft sort. I just replied, I'll have my lawyer get in touch with yours and show her around. I contacted my attorney as soon as she departed. Amy had been busy, it turned out. Submitted an application for emergency spousal assistance using the acquisition funds. Attempted to change the custody arrangement by arguing that I was a flight risk due to my newfound money. Even contacted a few of my former colleagues in search of dirt. The true humor. In between gym pictures with her new trainer, she continues to share motivational sayings on Instagram about overcoming negativity and discovering your truth. I suppose Mike was replaced. What transpired in court will be unbelievable to you all. Do you recall the security cameras I mentioned earlier? Yes, they will soon gain prominence. Last month was the scheduled court date. Amy appears to have plundered the Salvation Army, hair in an untidy bun, a simple outfit, and no makeup. Feelings of a struggling single mother. By the way, despite court orders, she had the children with her. Her lawyer takes the stage first, sitting in the front row, like props in her small play. The man is dressed in a suit that most likely cost more than my first vehicle. He begins by portraying Amy as a kind wife who sacrificed her own goals to raise our children and helped her husband in his IT profession. Asserts that since her emotional support was essential to the company's success, she should get half of the acquisition funds. Excellent emotional support indeed. False DV allegations convey more than anything else that I trust in you. Then they bring up the subject of domestic abuse once more. Try spinning it like the erratic tech guy who made a fortune with stocks and may be able to take my millions and leave the country. They even had the audacity to imply that with my limitless wealth, I may be dangerous. My lawyer, Greg Absolute Legend, appears bored as he sits there taking notes. Amy is always giving me these troubled glances, presumably asking why their narrative isn't making us panic. Then it's our turn. Greg adds, Your Honor, before we start our defense, I'd like to present some new evidence that's recently come to light, as he gets to his feet and straightens his tie. Here comes the video from my home's security cameras. You see, Amy's phony reunion act wasn't a one-time visit. She had been attempting to get into my office practically every day. You know who spent half of her time with her Mike. The whole planning process was captured on video. Amy and Mike saw her putting some fictitious proof in my mailbox when they were sitting in his car outside my house, physically practicing her impassioned speech. Before the DV allegations, she had written a letter to herself expressing her fear of me. They also made fun of how simple it would be to steal half of my money. But hold on, there's more. Do you recall the injuries she used to frame me with? It turns out that she and Mike staged those two back when they were still neighbors, as my ringing doorbell captured. In the video, they can be seen snapping pictures, rehearsing her terrified white face, and applying makeup to simulate injuries. How did the judge look through all of this? Priceless. Mike, who was subpoenaed to attend, appeared to be about to vomit. The bailiff forced him to stay, despite his repeated attempts to escape. The nuclear weapon is then dropped by Greg. It turns out that Mike and Amy had been attempting to con other people in a similar way. Two additional men, both accomplished computer workers, who were wrongfully accused of abuse, were located in separate locations. In divorce settlements, both were taken to the cleaners. Mike and Amy were experts at it. The true MVP, Jessica, Mike's former spouse. As an attorney, she had spent months constructing a case against them. She brought a ton of evidence, including bank documents, emails, and messages to the court that detailed how they had divided the money from their prior swindle. Amy's lawyer appeared to want to crawl under the table by the time Greg finished. Began to backpedal so quickly that I was afraid he would topple down. My client could have been perplexed by some of the circumstances, Your Honor. The judge was not amenable to it. Declared a recess. Returned an hour later looking quite angry. I ordered Amy to pay my legal expenses throughout her claim for the stock money, and I submitted the entire matter to the DA for possible fraud charges. The greatest thing, though, the change in custody. After watching those films of Amy and Mike conspiring to defraud me, the court ordered an urgent custody review. While Amy is being investigated for fraud and perjury, the children are now with me. Oh, and when the catch is over, Mike tries to flee. Immediately ran for the parking lot and was apprehended by Jessica's new boyfriend, a police officer. Let's talk about karma. The last update time. Since the court battle 3 months ago, a lot has transpired. Amy and Mike were arrested first. It turns out that it is federal territory to execute certain fraud schemes beyond state boundaries. For weeks, the FBI has been assembling evidence against them. In addition to me, they discovered 3 additional victims. All of the IT men were falsely accused of DV. Everything was lost. In the rig, everything becomes divorced. Amy and Mike were experts at their swindle. The children now live with me full-time. I won't lie, it's been difficult. 1 father and 2 traumatized children. Being a full-time parent requires a great deal of turmoil. During the first week, I sent Lily to school, wearing shoes that didn't match burnt supper 3 times, and forgot all about Max's show and tell day. However, we're working things out. I engaged a child psychologist with expertise in instances involving parental alienation. It's fantastic that Dr. Sarah doesn't give the children her complete name. At last, Lily talked about how Amy and Mike helped her to confess that she was afraid of me. I liked money more than they did. Max had been informed, therefore, I didn't want to see them anymore. Who treats their own children that way? The house thing went more smoothly than anticipated. Relocated us to a modestly ostentatious area with decent schools. Max has a gaming area. Minecraft-obsessed kids let Lily choose her own bedroom decor. Very pink right now. They feel safer thanks to a security system that would make Fort Knox envious. I began doing full-time work from home. The children now come first, even if my consultancy business is going well. Most initiatives are being handled by a strong staff while I concentrate on being a father. It's funny how life goes. My greatest accomplishment to date, after years of striving for tech success, is getting Max to laugh at my awful dad jokes. Amy faces 15 to 20 years in prison for perjury fraud and other offenses. I'm not quite sure I understand. The feds aren't playing along with her lawyer's attempts to reach an agreement. It turns out that coordinated fraud operations that target computer professionals are something they truly dislike. Who could have known as soon as things became serious? Mike rolled on Amy. The man sobbed while being held by the FBI. She was the mastermind, they said. Most likely. Furthermore, he was only a victim of her deceit. Unquestionably BS. He is still considering a minimum of 10 years. Through all of this, Mike's ex-girlfriend Jessica has been unexpectedly amazing. She has been excellent with the kids and is assisting the federal authorities in constructing their case. They recall her from our time as neighbors. She occasionally joins them in baking cookies, just sincere concern for 2 children who have endured a lot without any drama. The financial issues were resolved on their own. Create a suitable trust for the children. Bought a few uninteresting but reliable investments. A nonprofit that supports fathers battling bogus domestic violence accusations was suggested and established by my financial advisor. Already, the organization has assisted 3 fathers in helping their children resume dating. Yes, at this time, the answer is definitely no. Aside from trust difficulties, I won't introduce new people to my children until they're ready. Adult turmoil is enough for them to last a lifetime. However, there was some unanticipated benefit to all of this. Do you recall my previous employer, the one that let me go following the DV charges? Their CEO personally apologized over the phone, offered to hire me as a consultant. I declined and cleared my name in a public letter. It had meaning even if it was no longer needed. Lily's academic performance has improved. According to her instructors, she is smiling and engaging in class once more. Next semester, she will be a part of the scientific club. It turns out that she actually inherited her dad's nerdiness. Max remains Max. His heart was too large for his body, and he had boundless vitality. He has made the decision that when he grows up, he wants to produce computer games that assist others. Last week, the neighbor who made that untrue accusation against me stopped by to express regret, said that Amy had shown her fictitious proof to persuade her that I was dangerous. Even if we won't be friends, it's one fewer person who will think I'm a monster. There are still difficult days. The children occasionally experience nightmares. When I'm gone from view for too long, Lily becomes nervous. At least once a week, Max asks me if I'm certain I want them to live with me. However, we're mending by focusing on each day as it comes,